Call to order the October 5th, 2020 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome everyone. It's good to have all of you here virtually with us tonight on our Teams call, as well as those people watching on television. First up is the approval of our work session agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda, including the changes on page 3?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Shue and a second from Commissioner Honeycutt to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We move now to discussion items. First up is we're glad to have Sonja Richardson with us to talk about the Andrea Harris Social, Economic, Environmental, and Health Equity Task Force. Welcome, Sonja.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and County Commissioners and other guests on the call. I am Dr. Sonja Richardson. I'm a professor at UNC Charlotte in the School of Social Work. I am a social worker, a business owner of 13 years. I'm also a mother, wife, and I have been a resident of Cabarrus County for the last 18 years. And so I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak with you today. Very recently, Governor Roy Cooper created the executive order to establish the Andrea Harris Social, Economic, Environmental, and Health Equity Task Force. And today I just wanted to very briefly speak to you about the task force as a resident of Cabarrus County, as I am a representative of this county for the task force. And I just want to make sure that I am attuned to the needs of the residents of Cabarrus County as I advocate for changes throughout the state as it relates to the goals of the task force. And so I have just 2 slides for you. I'm primarily going to spend just a little bit of time, just a few minutes on the first slide regarding the Andrea Harris Task Force. So it was established by Governor Roy Cooper, as I stated, in Executive Order number 143. And you'll see it does have several goals and areas included within it. So we address the social, environmental, economic, and health disparities in communities of color throughout the state that have been impacted by COVID-19. And so what happened, of course, in the state of North Carolina was one of the first states to actually start collecting COVID data as it relates to race. And as they began to collect this data, they began to see some disproportionality as it pertains to COVID diagnoses and race, particularly among African Americans and Latinos. And so the governor created this task force to really be able to hone into some of the inequities as well as what's happening with COVID-19. The goals of the task force are to create economic stability, eliminate health disparities, and achieve environmental justice. And I have for you all the link to the task force. If you want to learn more additional information about it, that is included for you to go to and review that at a later time. Within the task force, there are also 5 objectives, and they are listed down at the bottom for you. And I just want to pull your attention to these objectives because these are the subcommittees that members of the task force have been delegated to. And so we have access to healthcare, enhanced patient engagement in healthcare settings, economic opportunities in business development and employment, environmental justice, and also creating educational opportunities. As a representative of Cabarrus County, I am on the task force, but I'm also charged with goal number 5, which is creating educational opportunities for communities of color in the state of North Carolina. Within this subcommittee that I am assigned to, we are collecting information regarding the needs of residents in the state, and particularly as it pertains to education. And so what I wanted to leave with the task force today is just for you to consider if you have any ideas, thoughts, recommendations that are specific to the needs of Cabarrus County making sure that those needs are either communicated directly to the task force or are communicated to myself to make sure that I'm advocating for the needs of this county. I love Cabarrus County. I've been a resident here 18 years. I plan to be here 18 more years or more. And I would love to make sure that the needs of diverse residents in our county are really attuned to and that we're advocating for those needs. So on the next slide, I just have a couple of questions. And as I went back and looked at the questions today, I'm sorry for the typos in the slide, but I think I was a little excited about this presentation. But all the content that you need to see is on there. I just wanted you to consider some of the needs of Cabarrus County residents, how it might be showing up, how COVID might be showing up differently in our county, and where is support needed in our county to further the goal of creating economic stability, eliminating health disparities, and achieving environmental justice. Again, I thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to discuss this further or offer any recommendations for us to consider. And again, I appreciate your investment in really advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our county. And I look forward to your continued work and leadership. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. I'm sorry, Sonja. I'm looking at the heading of your sheet there. But does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask of Sonja? Well, we certainly, go ahead, Commissioner Honeycutt.
Well, since I don't really have any questions at this time, I appreciate her coming and doing this presentation so we're aware of what's going on in this area. And we'll look forward to hearing more from what she finds out. And if I can be of help in any way directly, feel free to contact me.
Thank you very much.
Great. Likewise, for sure. And, I bet you kind of posed some questions to us there at the end. And those are very similar to the questions that I would ask back of the task force. Mm-hmm. In looking over the material before the meeting. Are there things that you folks in your work have identified that we as a Board of Commissioners need to pay special attention to, or are there things that we maybe are overlooking that we need to be aware of? I think that some of the questions that you asked might be best answered by our folks at the Cabarrus Health Alliance. They have focused a lot on certainly the COVID issue specifically. May be in a better position to answer some of those questions, but it sounds like we have a great opportunity for a mutual back and forth questions and answers on both sides. And so we certainly appreciate your work and appreciate your representing Cabarrus County throughout the state.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I definitely will reach out to Cabarrus Health Alliance and gather some more information. And I will relay our reports. We are preparing reports from our findings. And so as we receive that information, I'll make sure to relay it back to you all so you're aware of it as well.
Excellent. Thank you. We appreciate you. And we certainly appreciate the great asset the University of North Carolina at Charlotte is to Cabarrus County and to our community as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 3.2 from Cabarrus Arena and Events Center. We're happy to have Kenny Robinson with us for his fiscal year 2020 annual report and 2021 outlook. Welcome, Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I appreciate your time today. Ms. Linker, if you could, I would like for you to run this slideshow. If not, I'll try to do it from here, but I think you'll do a much better job than I could at it. Commissioners, usually at this time of the year, we come to you and talk about the good things, the success we have year over year at Cabarrus Arena. We were right on track to do that last year, right until March 13th, when the coronavirus necessitated shutdowns and cessation of events all over the world. I'll kind of give you an idea of where we were at the end of February compared to previous years, how our fiscal year ended, and some idea of where I think we would have ended had it not been for COVID-19, just for comparison's sake. Then I'll move into some projections for 2021 as best we know now, and then answer any questions you may have. This first slide is strictly the number of events that we had in 2020. The blue boxes in the foreground are through February over the last 5 years. We were the high point in 2019, 139 events through February. 2020, 107 events. Not really unusual. We have fluctuations throughout the year. You'll see that we ended the year at only 112 events, but the gray box to the far right, back behind there, is where we think we would have ended based on the information we had throughout the fourth quarter of the year. We think we would have ended at 204 events, which would have been an all-time high. Unfortunately, things just didn't work out. We wish we never had to deal with this pandemic like the rest of the world, but I want to give you some idea with where we thought we would have ended. It would have been a very good year in terms of the number of events. And Ms. Linker, if you would, the next slide. I'll explain a little bit about a venue use day as we measure it before I talk about these details. I'll give you two examples. A concert typically moves in the morning. The performance is early evening, and by midnight or 1 o'clock overnight, they're gone. That counts as one venue use day in this measurement. Whereas a consumer show that may have a move-in day, 2 days that it's open to the public, and then a move-out day would take 4 venue use days. Wanted to give you that explanation before I tried to explain this graph. Again, the blue boxes for the last 5 years are in the foreground. As for February, each of the last 5 years, the orange boxes is where we ended fiscal year 20, and the little gray box in the background on 2020 is where we thought we would have ended. This graph, bigger numbers are better. So we were going in the right direction had it not been for COVID-19. Ms. Linger, if you would, the next slide. Gross operating revenue, and I did not include ticket sales in this measurement. And the reason I didn't do that is ticket sales typically stay with the show. It's just a straight pass-through through the venue. It's the show promoter's property. There's no reason to include those dollars and inflate those numbers. We've historically not kept track of operating revenue month to month, so I don't have the February total at the end of each year. But you can see from this graph, the orange is where we ended the year. We were down, $750,000 because of COVID-19, and we think we would have ended the year somewhere close to where we were in 2019. I don't think it would have been a record-setting year, but it may have been close. And again, this graph, bigger numbers are better. Ms. Linker, if you would, the next slide. And this is the operating deficit. We know the venue operates at a loss every year. So this graph, lower numbers are better. And I return to the same visuals with February for the last 5 years in blue in the foreground. Orange is where we finished the year, with the gray box being where we thought we would have ended had it not been for COVID-19. As you can see, we were doing pretty well in February. COVID-19 hit. We ended the year at a $749,000 loss, which was somehow we came in a few $1,000s better than budget on that. And we would have ended around $440,000, we think, had it not been for COVID-19. So those are some key performance indicators that we keep track of. They're central to our measurements. Just wanted to share those with you, not that they're worth much with the state of affairs in the world, but that's where we ended. Ms. Linker, if you would, next slide. We also keep track of some qualitative measures, both from the guests that come to our events and also from feedback we receive from our event organizers. The pie graph on the left are guest reviews taken straight off of our Google business page. Completely unsolicited. The reviewers largely don't know what the venue can influence and what is typically show content. We averaged 4.34 stars for the year. It was actually the exact same rating, overall rating we had the year before, but our number of responses went up substantially, somewhere in the 40% increase range from best I recall. And as you see, 59% were 5-star ratings, 26 4-star ratings, and then 10%, 2%, and 3% on 3-star, 2-star, and 1-star. We can learn a little bit from comments that guests made in those ratings. The two types of negative comments we saw were folks, the show not being exactly what they expected, typically show content concerns they have, and the other is cell phone and Wi-Fi service. Cell phone signal being weak at the venue, and then having to pay to use Wi-Fi. Since late winter, there's a cell phone tower that's gone up across the road, and it's improved cell signal tremendously, and we hope that those areas of concern will go away in the future. On the right of this slide, the event organizer survey results. These are the folks that actually rent the venue from us. We asked them a series of questions. 100% of the folks that rented the venue said they would recommend other events to do the same. You can see different aspects of our business, kind of where we fared. The food and beverage, that one average rating was an event in Gold Hall, and delivering concessions of a variety of concessions in that building is challenging just because of the equipment that and infrastructure in that building. So that's where that average comment, the rest of them were either good or excellent. Next slide, please. So COVID-19 starting in March really affected what we do. And I'm going to talk about where we stand today, more so than fiscal year 2020 in this. So since March, we've had 143 events canceled, but we've been able to have 17 events. And all of those were something that was allowed, and we met all the requirements of both state executive orders and interim guidance that comes from the governor's office. But having only 17 events and the revenue and net operating income effects it has, 7 of our full-time positions are working currently and have since July, either dramatically reduced hours or at 100% furlough. Our 90 or so part-time employees have not worked since March. The nonprofit groups that typically supplement our workforce on event days, they've not been able to be here and work and raise money for their cause. We have put in some expense mitigation strategies from March until June, the end of the fiscal year. We weren't quite as restrictive as we are now. We did some routine maintenance. We did some things to make the venue better for when we returned to business, kind of expecting to be open a little bit more than we are by now. But when it became apparent that that would not happen, we got more aggressive on our expense mitigation strategy. And you see really the only expenses that we're incurring right now are essential wage expenses, the bare minimum utilities. We are having a few events, and there are some expenses associated with that. A few services that we had under contract that we were not able to renegotiate. Necessary repair and maintenance items, things that definitely affect the operation of the venue that we're not able to defer. We're going ahead and tending to them. And then some equipment and supplies that we need to have in place when the venue does open again, whenever that may be. Ms. Linker, if you would, the next slide. So this is the tough part. What is our outlook to get us through the end of this fiscal year in June? And right now we simply don't know. We have some certainty about what our events look like 90 days from now. We have the chance to have 10 or 12 events in October, a couple in November, and that's essentially all we have through this calendar year. With the recent changes in the executive order, we may have a few meetings that pop up between now and the end of the year, but not much. We're starting to see serious conversations with some of our events in January and February about cancellation or postponement. We just don't know what that looks like quite yet. What we do know now about this current fiscal year is that our net income, our bottom line profitability, is going to be $600,000 less than budget. If you look at our financial statements now and over the next 3 months, you'll see we're tracking pretty close to budget, but the bottom really falls out if significant restrictions stay in place into the second and third and fourth quarters of this fiscal year. That comes to that third bullet point. Our net income will worsen quickly after mid-January if things don't improve. We have been able to do some expense mitigation. I mentioned some things earlier that we were doing, the essential expenses that we're incurring. There's also some repair and maintenance project that we've worked to defer, along with infrastructure and asset management, identified some things that we can defer until the future. That'll make up about $350,000 of that gap in the arena program fund as a whole. Our industry, both in live entertainment and the consumer and trade show industry, really, we don't see anything coming back to any semblance of normalcy until third quarter, calendar year 2021. And even then, no one knows what events are going to look like. We don't know if attendance is going to rebound. We don't know what ancillary revenue streams may be there. We don't know. And even though we don't know, our event calendar is the most dynamic now that I've seen since the venue's been in existence. It seems like our sales team answers 3 or 4 phone calls every day for events trying to find space, mainly January, February, March of next year, where we normally have an event booked and maybe one event on hold at this time of the year for those months. We're 3 and 4 holds deep every weekend up through about June. In all likelihood, it's going to be late January, probably into February, before we can make any type of educated guess about what the financial picture of the arena may look like at the end of next fiscal year. It's all dependent on how this virus plays out, what restrictions on gathering size are in place, and how likely it is folks want to return to public events. Ms. Linker, last slide, please. One thing I wanted to mention to you is when the time comes to reopen, we're going to operate under some plans that ASM Global has developed, and it's called Venue Shield. This is a proprietary program that was created by ASM Global in conjunction with Drexel University College of School of Medicine, ServPro, and AECOM that touches on every aspect of event operations and is geared specifically toward COVID-19 mitigation. I've listed some of the things that are part of it. The customer journey is how you deal with people from the time they arrive at the venue, go through the ticket buying process, get them to their seats, how they navigate the consumer show floor, how you queue them up in lines, how do you restrict access, those sorts of things. Anything that the customer touches is covered in customer journey. Event operations is some of the behind the scenes operations, what we need to do to prepare for an event. Environmental hygiene is exactly what you would expect. It's how do you clean and sanitize every surface in the venue. Food and beverage service, we operate much like a restaurant in some aspects. And as we all know, restaurants are significantly affected in the way they serve customers. We're going to be subject to most of the same and maybe even more restrictions than restaurants are now. So we've got to figure out how we do that. Workforce safety, both we want to make sure our workforce, the contractors that come in and work with us, anyone coming in the venue to do work, that their safety is protected just as much as the public is. Public awareness piece is how do we get the message out about what it is we're doing to make the venue and events safe for the public when it's time to come back to the venue. Technology and equipment is not a huge component at this venue just by the nature of what we do, but there are some things we may do like contactless payments, some things we can do with ticketing, maybe a few pieces of other technology that we can implement to make things less labor intensive to make the venue safe. Those are the 7 core components of Venue Shield, but they're going to guide us to create a set of house rules. And for lack of a better way to explain it, house rules are the things that each one of our event organizers just have to abide by. It could be things like you're just going to have to pay for law enforcement to be here, to have a presence in case one of your guests is not able to follow the rules and we need to ask them to leave. Law enforcement is able to enforce whatever rules we need to impose. It could be things like you've got to set aside, so many. If you have 1,000 people and we're able to serve concessions, you may need to set aside 2,500 square feet for a concessions area. Things like that event organizers are just going to have to follow to have events at Cabarrus Arena. And the last bullet, the event-specific safety plans. The intent of Venue Shield is for us to create this document, this plan, send it both to Cabarrus County and the Health Alliance for review and comment. And if we need to make revisions, we will. But we want you to feel comfortable that we're doing absolutely all we can to have a safe venue as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And then each event, we're going to rely on the event organizer and we're going to help them along the way. We want them to write a safety plan on COVID-19 mitigation strategies just for their event. Each of our events are different. You can't write one plan that covers everything. We don't know everything about every event and how it's operating, but we're going to ask our event organizers to tell us that. And we'll lead them to prepare a plan that can be reviewed by all the local agencies that have input and get sign off that the event sounds safe to hold. So that's Venue Shield. It's something that we'll get to the county likely in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We have 5 of the 7 sections are complete. A 6th is about half complete and we're waiting on 1 component, but we'll get that before you as quickly as we can and make sure everyone's happy with the way we're going when the venue is able to reopen some point in the future. And I wish we all knew when that would be. So that's my presentation. Ms. Linker, thank you for operating the slides for me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Kenny?
Kenny, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment. I appreciate your diligence and keeping things going out there. No doubt it's difficult when you run in with such a low staff and having to deal with vendors that are wanting to come in and those that's canceling. So, I feel for you, but I hope that you continue to stay well and we'll get things rolling here for long.
Mr. Shue, thank you for that, and I'll be sure to pass those sentiments along to staff. One thing I didn't mention is in ASM Global's portfolio of 300 or so venues, those 17 events that we've had is fairly active in the company. Many venues are shut completely down. The entire staff is furloughed. My predecessor that's moved on to North Charleston is in close to that situation now. The only venue that I know of that has had more small events than we have is one in Florida that is we're about a 3/4 scale version of that venue. We look exactly alike if you look at a floor plan and have a lot of the same type of events. They're more active just because of the state of affairs in Florida, but we're doing some good things, doing it as safely as we know how, and we're appreciative that you're allowing us to continue to do that.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Kenny? Well, just thank you for that report. I think that what we heard from you is probably very similar to what we would hear from businesses all over Cabarrus County. Have had similar challenges with closures and having to cancel events, and it is an extremely difficult environment out there that we've all have to make the best of. But it sounds like you're doing a good job of making the best of it. I will say you had you along with Parks and Active Living had an extremely successful event in the parking lot this past Saturday. I was fortunate to be able to attend that, the Touch a Truck event. And the only complaint that I had about it was there was so much to see on both sides of me. I couldn't crane my head back and forth fast enough to see everything that that was out there. But the children certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed it myself. Yeah, so we're glad that some of those kind of things are still able to happen, and so we're looking for better times in the future. And thank you for all your efforts.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move now to item 3.3, Cabarrus County Emergency Medical Services Headquarters Project Update. We're glad to have Kyle Billifer and Jimmy Lynch to talk with us about that item. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Just kind of wanted to give you an update, and then Lauren Linker will, we've got a short video to kind of show the current schematic design of where we are. In terms of milestones on where we are, we've signed off on the pre-construction services for the construction manager at-risk contract. So that is, again, Vinoy McFarland, and that selection was brought in front of you. So obviously the pre-construction services is just a very small percentage of it. So they provided a proposal, and the design team and myself and county staff reviewed that, and we've moved forward with that contract, and that's actually being sent back to them today. And then we've also made a selection on the geotechnical engineer of record, who will also be the construction materials testing. We had a long discussion, both county staff and the design team of the building, and this site is very unique, as you know, with all of the rock that we all know about. So we wanted to get that geotech and that construction materials testing firm on board very early in the process. Typically, in most of the projects we do, we aren't bringing somebody on this early, but we do have them, and that's going to help us with the design team, hopefully in orientation of that. It just so happens that the construction materials testing company and geotech that was chosen is Concord Engineering, and some of you might be aware they've done significant amounts of work on both this parcel and the bus garage parcel, which is the adjacent parcel for the school system. They did all of that work. So I guess what I'm trying to say is they have a large amount of historical information on that site, which should behoove the design team in the county. Now I would ask Ms. Linker if she could kind of play the flyover video and show the different attachments. Pretty please. Okay, so I kind of hope that video did it justice. Ms. Linker, if you could kind of show the attachments I had on the agenda item, I can point out a couple things. Thank you. So the flyover, the video you just saw is basically showing you angles of phase 1 and proposed phase 2 from each of the different ways coming in. And again, this is just the initial schematic design. Lauren, if you could scroll to the next one, please. It kind of shows you a different angle coming in. And again, all this is schematic. We have discussed some of the exterior selections, and some of you might remember what we did with the courthouse is we ended up bringing a panel in for you, an actual selection panel of those exterior materials to actually touch. And I am planning on moving forward in that same direction with this project. You'll notice it's definitely more of an earthy tone that goes to it, and it has a lot of sunshades and things like that, which is very similar to what we did with the courthouse and what you're seeing in construction right now. But I really just wanted you to kind of get an idea of the feel and the aesthetics of the exterior of the building. In terms of the programming or the actual layout inside, EMS has worked extensively with the design team. We've gone through probably 5 different types of meetings where we've switched a couple rooms around and increased some space and decreased other space. And we had to look pretty hard into the MEP on how we were going to handle a future phase so that we made sure that our mechanical rooms weren't too small, meaning we don't make a mistake this time around, and then when we go to expand and how many years it will be to do phase 2, we wanted to make sure we would have enough room to accommodate all that, both electrically and mechanically. So we've had everybody look at these different programming layouts, including ITS in terms of all the data capabilities that need to be in there, and everybody has kind of signed off on it. Jimmy Lentz is on the line. I'm sure he can speak to the fact of the internal programming that it meets their needs.
Thank you. We are here. Obviously, this is a very exciting time at Cabarrus County EMS, and we certainly appreciate the continued support through this. As you all know, because many of you are familiar with where we're at now, we are relatively tight for space here. So working through the administrative area and the administrative operational area of this with lessons we have learned through research of other facilities and that ADW has learned in their involvement in other facilities has definitely been worthwhile and beneficial. So we're excited. If you've got any specific questions of us, please reach out to us, and we're looking forward to the future.
So I have a question on the what I think it says the alternative training multi-purpose setup is the same. The yellow and the white are the same room. It's just different ways it can be set up. Correct?
That's exactly.
That is correct. I'm sorry, Kyle. One way is set up with tables and like to seating for like 120 with a desk type or a table type setting, and the other setting further down is just chairs. Like
theater style.
Correct.
Okay.
There's an alternate C for COVID setup, but I didn't have them put it up.
Okay. And then I don't know about everybody else, but on mine I can't blow it up big enough to see like the brown areas. Are those offices, or there's some living space in there, or can you just kind of point by color to me so I get a better idea?
Sure. And as you go to the right of the screen from the brighter yellow that is training and training scenario rooms, you get into the administrative suite, which would be the director, assistant directors, administrative assistants we have on staff now, and we will also have some office space for our physicians, our medical director, and our directors to see how that may expand in the future. If you go directly across the hall from that, the other somewhat shaded darker yellow area is like operational administration. So the shift supervisors, the shift lieutenants, and training officers would be in that area. We would be right across the hall for each other for proximity and convenience, but then again, too, we would be separate so they can handle daily shift operations in their area without truthfully, getting in our way or vice versa.
Thank you.
Kyle, this is Lynn. I have a question for you, and it's in reference to the proposed road improvements to Rock Hill Church Road that's supposed to come out to the Union Cemetery Road. And I seen on one of the video there where they had, looks like they had a new design right there in front of Ben Minot Chevrolet, where instead of coming to the stoplight, you just go right on around. I seen that, but the word on Union Cemetery Road, is it going to be closed? Is it going to tee out there with Rock Hill Church Road? And how is that going to affect the ingress and the egress of getting in and out of this building?
I will let Mr. Marshall address that. We did put money in the design contract to be able to deal with the DOT, because we had a couple initial meetings on that. And then when they ran into funding problems, from what I was told, is that was taken off the plate. So I'll kind of let Jonathan comment on that.
Yeah, actually, we have some folks on the with us that'll be joining us for a later agenda item that probably even know more than I do. But it is one of the projects that's been affected by the funding issues with NCDOT. So we are showing the design as in place at this point. As we go through and do our traffic impact analysis, which will be required, we will have them assess the plans to that date. But right now, there's where Union Cemetery intersects with Cabarrus Avenue will be a right in and right out only. But we also will have access from this parcel to Warren Coleman Boulevard, and then we'll be able to use Union Cemetery to the relocated Rock Hill Church Road when that's built to get back to 29 north and south. So one of the advantages of this site is we can go any direction. It's very central to the county. So north and south on Warren Coleman, you get onto Cabarrus Avenue easily, or get to Rock Hill Church Road to get to 29 south. So I think it's going to be very accessible for the crews coming in and out of there and restocking, as well as for the staff that works there.
That sounds great, but Jonathan, did DOT give any type of indication as to when they're going to be able to get that project going? Because it looks to me like it could be several more years, maybe.
It's going to be several more years. From the best of my recollection, and again, Phil Conrad will be on later, and you may want to discuss this, but it's been pushed back to the kind of towards the end of this planning horizon. So we're looking in the mid.
I think Phil just sent us a note in the message that said 2025.
That's. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So right away was moved to 2022. Construction was moved to 2025. That's been within the last 45 days. It was one of a number of projects that was delayed, but it's probably, in terms of near-term projects, it was affected most. But yeah, I did put that in the chat.
Appreciate the input, guys.
Okay, any other additional questions for Jimmy or Kyle? I think that that flyover view was so good that there are probably people watching on television that will go out there and expect to see it on that corner when they drive by. That really was. They did a good job with that.
It'll be another 2.5 years. So
okay. We move now to item 3.4. I think Kyle's got our next 3 items on the agenda. This one will be Courthouse Expansion Project Update.
Well, thank you again. And as Chairman Morris said, this is a Courthouse Expansion Project Update. And I was going to kind of go through some of the milestones that we've already hit, and then give you an idea of what milestones are coming up, and then tell you about some issues we've had and kind of how we're working through some of those issues. And then Ms. Linker has some pictures to show. So currently we're at about a 32% of excavation has been completed. So kind of digging out the hole where the new building will go, we're about 32% complete with that. We were able to open up the Means and Union intersection. We completed the demolition of the courthouse annex and dried in the demising wall, which is basically what, if you're at the governmental center and you're looking at the courthouse where the courthouse annex was, you're seeing what almost looks like a roof membrane horizontally and vertically on that space. And that is, we dry that in. So that is kind of the membrane over the demising wall. Coming up, we're going to be completing the utilities. We'll start the rammed aggregate piers. We'll put out the GMP2, which is the new building that will go out to bid. It's actually started this week. They've already had the pre-qualifying meetings. And then obviously the excavation will be completed, another 68% to go. Most people, when I talk to them, excuse me, about this project, they ask me when they're going to see something. So I went through the schedule and kind of brought it up. I think you'll start to see steel come out of that hole by March or April of next year is when you'll see something visible. Until that time, it'll be shoring and utilities and excavation and concrete that you won't be able to see from road level because of the construction fencing that's there. Some of the issues we've had over the past month have, we had some fire hookup issues with the courthouse, meaning the FDC or the standpipe that the fire department would hook up into. We had some issues with that because of where it was located. We've had to relocate it to be able to provide that coverage for the historic courthouse. We did run into about 650 linear feet of an asbestos covered water line. We also did find an underground storage tank. We're hoping to avoid those, but we have found one to this point, and I'm hopeful that that's all that we'll find. So we have notified the state on that, and we've handled the disposal of the soil. And now we're moving forward with the state on types of monitoring wells that we'll have to have in place for that. And that was on Means Avenue. It was not in the courthouse annex parking lot. We did, as we did the demolition of the courthouse annex, obviously we had moved courthouse staff out of the spaces that are right adjacent to the demising or the party wall that separates the building. And we did that for safety reasons because we were obviously demolishing a building next door. There could be a lot of heavy debris that would come through, and it did. We did have 2 instances where some of that courthouse annex that we demolished did come through that demising wall. So Messer handled that situation great. Staff worked with us very well, so they're all back into their spaces now. And the last major issue we've had is telecom. Dealing with Windstream on rerouting some of their pathways. We're still waiting for one. We've done one temporary move that allowed us to put in our utilities and open up Means and Union, but we're still waiting for the permanent fix. So that's one of the issues we're still waiting for. If you know anything about putting telecom in the ground, as your electric, water, and sewer move with their utilities, putting them in the ground, you leave open a space and telecom comes behind you, and then when they get done, you cover everything up and you keep on going. And we're a little bit behind on getting that, so we are working towards that. As we start to move forward, we will see some changes in the ceiling design contract. We have to add the commissioning in, which we had already planned to do. And as we have started to deal with the coordination with the Union streetscaping, we're adding some engineering fees into that to make sure that those elevations line up and all the conflict resolution is done prior to that streetscaping coming in, because it does change the layout on Union Street with our courthouse. And Ms. Linker, if you could show the pictures, I'll just briefly point them out. There's some of the things that I discussed. Okay, that shows you the actual, thank you very much. That shows you the Means and Union intersection. So that kind of shows you all the utility work that was put in there. And obviously we'll actually go back into some of that and open it back up and put some permanent things in there. And so that's still subject to rework, but it should not affect the actual intersection. Ms. Linker, if you could scroll down to the next one. That shows you the actual basement of the courthouse annex. So that's facing the sheriff's administration and jail annex, looking out on Corbin. So that was one of the trickier parts, and we had to be pretty careful. COVID was a blessing in this case because we were not transporting inmates through the tunnel and through the elevator that's right on the other side of that wall right there. If you could scroll down. That shows you the actual shoring, the wall. That's along Church Street. So that's what's put up legally, what you have to put in when you're doing that type of work along a road like that. So it just kind of shows you, you can't see that from driving down Church Street, and I wanted an image that showed you all the work that's going on behind there. You can scroll down. And that shows you the 32% excavation at that point. That picture is probably only about 20% at that point. But that shows you how much dirt they're moving out of there. And I'll take any questions that anyone might have.
Okay, questions for Kyle? Not particularly a question, but just a couple comments. I think they've done a really nice job on the construction fencing with some of the graphics that they've included along showing what the building's going to look like. But personally, I don't like it because they've got it screened off so well that I can't see what's going on in there. I like to spy on what they're doing, but I'm sure for motorist safety, it's probably best that we keep our eye on the road and not be looking down in there when we drive by. I did have one question from a citizen that I have quite honestly not figured out where to answer it yet. We have so many different methods of questions coming, from Facebook messengers to text messages to emails, and I can't find her, but I did read her initial question, which was she was expressing concern about the tree in front of the historic courthouse and the level of construction that's going on Means Avenue adjacent to that tree. If I were to answer that question, my answer would have been none of the work that is occurring on Means Avenue is optional. Those are all things that have to be taken care of, and you're dealing with a lot of very, very old infrastructure there that has to be updated and corrected, and that even though we all treasure the old tree that's there and hope that and propose for it to continue to be there, that's a little bit of a precarious situation with everything that's going on. Would you agree with the things I said, or have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think that was eloquent and a very good way of explaining it. We didn't run into any issues when we tore up the intersection, but yes, with the plaza that will go in towards the end of GMP2 or towards the end of the new building project, with that root zone, we're unsure of what we'll run into. We've had arborists do reports on that tree. There are some signs of stress on that tree that have nothing to do with any construction we've done so far, but it's not our intent to take down the tree. We're going to do everything we can to preserve that tree, but until we open that up and get into those actual, putting the plaza in there and the actual elevations along with the streetscaping that'll be coming along, I think that's when we'll better know. But it is not the intent to take it. I know that the renderings, anything we show does not have the tree in there. And a lot of those times that was just for line of sight so people could see it, but it's not our intent to remove that tree.
Right. Thank you. And hopefully folks that have questions about that will see this meeting, and that will help answer. Any other questions for Kyle? Okay, we'll move then to item 3.5, and this sounds really exciting. Chilled Water Redundancy Initiative.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In September of 2019, Infrastructure and Asset Management entered into agreement with a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer to investigate the feasibility of adding additional chilled water capacity at the Sheriff's Office and Detention Center. Staff also tasked that MEP engineer with investigating the cost effectiveness of connecting the chiller water system at the SODC to the new courthouse building chiller water system. When the SODC was originally built, there was a footprint created for an additional chiller. Based on the age of the equipment, IAM began evaluating the capital improvement projects for a chiller replacement and addition at the Sheriff's Department. During this process, IAM began to discuss achieving the increased chiller water capacity by connecting the SODC system with the system being designed for the new courthouse building. IAM continued to work on this project. This involved extensive investigation into the current system while steering the new courthouse building MEP design in such a way that it could accept this chilled water redundancy concept. IAM is at a stage where they feel the design can be finalized and be successful in allowing chilled water redundancy to both the SODC and the courthouse complex, which includes the new building and the 1975 current building. In an effort to avoid pitfalls or design issues, we have toured 2 other facilities that utilize this type of redundancy. The benefits to implementing a project like this will manifest themselves by allowing the county more time in executing repairs and more likely equipment replacements. If the county does move forward with the scope of this work addition, it would require a change order to the guaranteed maximum price number 2, the GMP2, which has yet to be received from Messer but is currently being bid. Per the County Capitals Projects Fund Ordinance, the county manager may transfer amounts between contingency funds, which are set aside for a specific project or budgetary shortfalls, or upon the appropriate approval of a change order. IAM wanted to inform you of this opportunity. However, no action is required by the Board of Commissioners. So I must have wrote that in one of my very technical moments. So I will explain it the best that I can. You have 2 very large buildings that sit across the street from each other. And when you go to other county complexes that have what I would call city blocks, like Mecklenburg and Wake, where they own everything in a certain amount of area, they basically rob Peter to pay Paul. They use redundancy between those buildings, which is more complicated than it sounds because it is a lot of piping, and these days it's a lot of electronic sensors that you can use your phone to pipe this water somewhere else. They do that so if they have a chiller failure, which those are those extremely large $200,000 pieces of equipment, if they have a chiller failure for one of those buildings, they can pipe water from one of their other ones to maintain that chilled water, which that is what creates your air conditioning. That's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about chilled water. That's air conditioning. Due to the fact that the jail housing is a 24/7 operation and we could have anywhere between 220 to 350, 400 folks in there, obviously air conditioning is a pretty big deal. So that's kind of how this all started, is when we were looking at what it would take to replace the chillers that are in there, because they are at the age where we need to start thinking about that. We started to float around this idea of redundancy. And when we were going out and walking all of these different courthouses all over the state, which you all are aware that we went and did with the design team and the courthouse staff, we began to see a lot of this. And we do have a perfect vessel to get chilled water from one building to the other. And it's the multi-million-dollar tunnel that we built. And there is a way to make this happen and provide this redundancy. And it would require me to increase the design contract to be able to finalize the mechanical layout for this. I've already paid for about 25% of that design based on the feasibility study that we did. We would have to increase Ceiling's contract to finalize that design, and then we would have to basically put it out as an alternate bid into the GMP2. And all of that would require it actually does not require your approval, but I want to make you aware of it. I think this is something that contingency funds should be used for. This is making our buildings work smarter and not harder, and also saves us on a immediate purchase for an equipment failure that might happen. It gives us some time to react. And plus, these days, they just don't make chillers and have them on the shelves. You're talking about something that has a 3 to 5 month lead time on building it.
Okay, questions for Kyle on this item?
Real quick, was that technique used at the research campus in Kannapolis? Did they do that there?
I would not be surprised if they did. I don't have that knowledge, but this is used in a lot of universities with larger buildings that are next to each other. You don't see it for the way we're spread out. It wouldn't have worked. To be quite honest with you, if I didn't have that tunnel, it wouldn't work. Right. But that tunnel is a very expensive asset for me that really is just used for people walking across. This could help me a lot. And quite honestly, we're running redundancy of fiber and different ITS things through there. I figured what better way also run some chilled water through there, right, and myself that capacity.
Yeah. No, to me, it's a very proactive approach. I think you're exactly right. You have an asset, you're looking to capitalize on something that, sunk cost. We've already spent the money. We have the tunnel. We own it. It's there. It's not going away. Can we capitalize and use it for something? I think that's a good. I think that's a good way to do it.
I would certainly agree with that. I mean, I think if we had a chiller failure on the Justice Center complex and had a long time to replace that and had to deal with relocating the residents of the jail, that would be a huge undertaking. And I mean, it's not like it's a building where you can just raise the windows. So it makes perfect sense to me. And in answer to your question, Commissioner Kiger, I think you're right about the research campus. I think they have a central plant there that supplies chilled water throughout that entire complex. And it was designed that way initially. So they have got multiple units over there, but this sounds like a great opportunity. That my only concern was that we would be able to use the existing tunnel, and it would not involve. I still remember the length of time that we had that road closed to put that tunnel in, but that's already in place, so you can use it as it is, right, without any.
Yes, sir. That's the plan. Yes, sir.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move then to item 3.6, Courthouse Expansion Public Art Update. Also, Kyle on that one.
So again, just kind of an update on to go through the public art for the courthouse, and this has a couple different facets. Obviously, there's portraits that are inside the courthouse, and we are working with the courthouse staff on that, and we will continue on that. Then you obviously have some public art that's in the lobby, and I'm going to give you an update on that. And then we need to discuss some public art in the plaza, which is currently now Means Avenue. It's been September 2019 was the last time I was up in front of the board about public art. I had to go back and review that meeting just to kind of remember what we all spoke about, and did want to kind of bring up a couple points that the different board members had made comments on to me. One of the comments that you made was the Cannon Foundation in terms of possible funding for any of the artwork. And County Manager Downs and I have not had those conversations with them yet. I think that we will. I think that'll probably be possibly the actual portraits and the art that goes inside of the building and on the walls. I think really today what I wanted to focus on with you was the plaza and what I'm going to call the lobby piece, or what we're envisioning needs to be suspended from the ceiling in the lobby just because of the sheer volume of the lobby. We've had some meetings with the city of Concord. We've had meetings with the folks that run the Clearwater studio. We've had some meetings with our folks at the Historic Courthouse or the Arts Council. And we've kind of, this is my first time through it, but we are going to have to do a request for proposals on artwork for that lobby piece. And looking and listening to the last meeting we had in September 2019, I felt that the board was in a consensus to move forward and examine art that would be suspended in the ceiling in the lobby. But after talking to people that have done these RFPs and actually put together that committee that approves and awards it, one of the things that we have to have is how much we are willing to spend on such a piece. They're telling me that to move forward, you have to put something in there for these artists to look at, to understand what type of money we're looking at. And I guess I'm looking for some input from the board, or would the board rather that the county manager, myself, and deputy county manager Marshall sit down and come up with what we think is an appropriate amount based on the cost of the building and also kind of what we're envisioning going in there. That would be the first piece I'd like to receive some input on kind of where everyone's head is on that.
Commissioners, do you have thoughts along those lines?
I think it would be nice to have a little bit of research done on what they feel like would be appropriate based on research from other areas or from professionals or people who understand what we might want and need and what that might cost. And then I guess we'll have to evaluate whether that's something we feel we can do or not, because I don't have any idea personally.
Yeah, Kyle, in your research, what have you looked at, or what is our architects saying in their past history of projects? What is that percentage of? Do they go by a percentage of total construction, or what's the typical method of coming up with that?
Your larger counties go with a percentage of construction. Sometimes it's 1%, sometimes it's less. What I'm finding is the counties that are more equivalent to us in population are they do it project by project, and I really can't get a beat on that. I think part of my first understanding was to try to understand the sheer volume of what we were looking at, but without any ideas. Every person I talked to who's done these RFPs basically says I need to either have an idea of what I want to put up there, or I need to have an idea of what I'm going to spend before I go talk to anybody. So I kind of feel like I'm chasing my tail, so to speak.
Yeah. So I guess commissioners, we could if it pleases you, that maybe we can have some individual conversations with each of you to see what your vision is that could possibly be there, and then maybe we could come back with that estimated budget based on what type of art you think needs to go in there.
Speaking for myself, I think that would be a good approach. I definitely would look to staff to come back to us with some recommendations of what might be appropriate. I have absolutely no knowledge of what might be reasonable or unreasonable in that regard. I just since Kyle just reviewed that other meeting, I think maybe we had some conversation about potentially something that spoke to our textile heritage. Was that part of our conversation? I think.
Yeah, something of a woven nature that maybe just didn't speak to the textiles, but also the weaving of the citizens, and I guess the different types of backgrounds of Cabarrus County. So yes, but I don't know if that I'm not sure that gets me any bit closer to a price tag. I'm just being honest. I'm a little bit out of my depth. If you told me you wanted the building blue, I could probably tell you how much that would cost, but this is definitely out of my area of expertise. So we will continue to dig. I really just kind of wanted to have a blessing to continue to dig, and then County Manager Downs and myself can bring that information to you. I do understand the intent is that you all wish us to proceed with trying to pursue artwork in the lobby, though.
I would say yes, and I see heads shaking yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that kind of gets me close to kind of which way I need to proceed. Just so you know, there would be a committee that would be involved in reviewing the submissions once we put this RFP out there. And I would be inviting one or two of the board members to be on that committee. So don't be surprised if you see that information come across, and I'll leave it up to the board to decide who they want on that. I'll know better if it's one or two people once we figure out how large that committee is going to be, whether it's 6 people or 10 people or 12 people. We will have the Arts Council be involved in that. They've already gladly volunteered their services. Noel has been very helpful to this point.
Yeah, I think we need to, when maybe we'll have some other conversations with you in the next week or so, is what's that theme? What is the theme? If it is that textile and then sort of the entwining, because some of the architectural design is including the textile theme. So we can go back and look at a couple of different options on that. And is it modern? Is it traditional? That's the kind of, I guess, the next direction we're going to be asking probably is. So maybe we can come back with a couple of options if the Clearwater folks can give us a couple of options, or the Arts Council can take that theme, that broad theme, and come back with a couple of options, and then maybe we can show you a few examples of what they're thinking, what we're proposing, and then maybe even a cost of something that's something that looks like that would be.
I think that's a good approach. I don't even know. I mean, what the possibilities are at this point, but if we had a local artist that was in a position to supply that, then I think that would be wonderful. That may or may not be possible. Commissioner Shue, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to make a recommendation to Kyle whenever you start putting this committee together that you might want to consider Jim Ramsor and also Judge Horton. Because they're pretty much well known as being Cabarrus County historians, and so they could probably help you quite a bit. And it's just something that I can throw out there. I think Judge Horton's still around and doing fairly well, I think, and I know Jim Ramsor is. So just the thought, you can take it
Yes,
as
sir.
it is.
Yes, sir. I'm already actually working with Judge Hortman on what I'm calling our history of courts wall, which is an art component, but is an art component that we can do in-house. So I don't need to do an RFP or a cost for it, but he is, we've already had 2 or 3 meetings on that. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess the other conversation, and we'll have these with you, is the theme of the interior of the building. Do you want to carry that out to the exterior and then into the plaza area as well, or there's got to be some kind of transition in there? So we'll continue to have those conversations and bring you back some examples.
Very good. Any additional questions or comments on this item?
Well, there is one attachment to the agenda item, if Ms. Linker could show that, and that was some areas that we had identified in the public plaza or the exterior of the building that could accept art. And when I say that, I mean structurally speaking, could accept art. And we've had some initial discussions. So these would be things that would be displayed outside, and there would need to be some decision made if these are going to be rotating pieces or permanent. And we just began having those conversations. And I don't think we're farther along on the artwork inside the building than we are any of the areas outside. But I did want to say that I'd had some discussions with the Arts Council about, would they entertain being the curator of these pieces outside? And their response was absolutely, we would be the curator, but that we would have no financial or insurance liability dealing with any of them. Meaning, if we were doing something that was permanent or rotating, meaning you put a new piece out there every 6 months, they would not handle any of the procurement or purchasing or commissioning of that art, nor would they handle any of the liability insurance on it. And I have spoken with other local municipalities and counties that have done this, and some of them do these rotating pieces. Other ones just do something permanent. Again, we're going to have the Charters of Freedom out there. We'd originally not put in any areas to be able to accept this art, and that would be doing something different with the footers to be able to handle it structurally, and probably also putting in some electric so that if there was any uplighting needed for that artwork. I just kind of wanted to understand, again, this is separate from what we're talking about inside the building. I think we have a better scope and idea of how that process works. I just wanted to ask if the board has any input on actual public art in the plaza itself.
Just a quick question. The list of exclusions of what the Arts Council will do as the curator seem pretty long. So tell us what they actually, as the curator, what would they be doing?
Assisting us with the selection of the art and coordinating the installation of it if it was temporary, meaning the rotating of it. But I would imagine if it's heavy enough, if that's what we're talking about, meaning if it ends up being actual sculptures and things like that, that infrastructure and asset management would have to be heavily involved because of the type of equipment that would need to get in there. So I think that would be more the selection process.
And you did say we are going to do the Charters of Freedom?
It's our intent. There's a space laid out on the actual, yes, I've just looked at the utility plans 3 days ago, and all of the utilities that we need going there are for there. We have not had a confirmation back from the Charters of Freedom folks that they'll be providing that to us, but County Manager Downs and myself have already discussed there are some other avenues we could go to get those, but yes, they are. But when I talk to people that are in the art realm or industry, the Charters of Freedom are not truly considered art.
But something is typical that would go in a legal or a law or court complex. So yeah, we're still working on that. If it's not the ones that the group actually designed originally, then we will create something very similar.
Okay, good.
Very good. And this committee that you're talking about, hopefully, perhaps they will take a look at these exterior spaces as well. Or were you thinking of that strictly for the interior items?
I'm thinking the committee that reviews the RFPs will be for the inside strictly. I think the exterior art that I just showed those possible locations, I think that might be something where we have to make the decision to make those sites available for art, meaning structurally make them be able to accept art, and then the actual population of art there might have to happen after the project.
Let us, yeah, if there's one or two of you that would be interested in serving that, or at least offering or having some of those conversations with us, that'd be great. And then we can bring back another report to you in the next month or two.
I am perfectly willing, if you can hear me over my dog barking, I am perfectly willing to be either on the committee or if on the interior, or if on the outside it's working with Kyle and just being the liaison back to the board. Whatever suits you guys, I'm perfectly willing to do.
That will be the same for me as well, Kyle.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, then we will move to item 3.7. We are happy to have Debbie Brannon with us for our innovation report.
Good afternoon and happy National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Welcome to the October Innovation Report. It's exciting to listen to talk of innovation with building chillers, and innovation is not always digital. Sometimes it's making our buildings a little smarter and efficient. I'd like to start today by talking about our Employee Digital Book Club. The October book for the Employee Digital Book Club is Resilient Americans. We may not have it all together, but together we have it all. Author Diane Burden Cox is the CEO of Disaster Scope, an emergency management consulting firm based in Southern California. In Resilient Americans, Cox shines a light on the foundations of resilience with hopeful and compelling stories of simple ways we can move forward as individuals, communities, and as a nation. Simple human compassion is more essential to our national resilience and strength than most of us realize. This book helps us appreciate ourselves and our neighbors and may even help us start those conversations worth having. Last month, I was happy to report that Cabarrus County placed 3rd in the 2020 Digital County Survey, and our CIO, Todd Shanley, was selected as a 2020 Top 25 Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers by the Government Technology magazine. Today, I have the privilege of announcing 2 more accomplishments. The Center for Digital Government, a national research and advisory institute focused on technology policy and best practices in state and local government, has awarded Cabarrus County 1st place in the 2020 Overall County Government Experience Award. This award recognizes the achievements and best practices of states and cities and counties that are radically improving the experience of government and pushing the boundaries of how citizen services are delivered. I'm proud to say that we were measured against some of the largest and most innovative counties in the nation, and we placed 1st. Los Angeles County, California, with a population of over 10 million, placed 2nd, and San Diego County, California, with a population of over 3 million, placed 3rd. Cabarrus County also won a Project Experience Award for the MyCabco and digital payment platform presented to you in September's Innovation Report. 30 Government Experience Project Awards were presented in 4 categories for city, county, state, and federal government projects with a single focus. Congratulations to everyone. These experience awards and achievements are made possible through the Board of Commissioners' continued investment in technology, the IT department's innovation and continuous improvement of our digital services, the communications department's creative engagement of our constituents using multiple communication channels, and all county departments leveraging technology to enhance and improve our citizen experience. And finally, the citizens and businesses of Cabarrus County that are willing to embrace new ways of interacting with government. Last month's digital employee book, Conversations Worth Having, we discussed starting with the why, how defining our purpose helps us frame our work goals and conversations in positive ways. The county's overall why is defined in the county's mission, vision, and strategic priorities. Posting this slide every month to show how the innovation report aligns to the county's strategic plan helps demonstrate the positive impact our work has on the community as we work together to solve complex issues. Today's innovation report is on cybersecurity. Primarily, cybersecurity is aligned with an accountable government and a safe community. But we also, with poor cybersecurity, can threaten our thriving economy, our development, and our cultural recreation. As I mentioned in the beginning, October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I have Jack Dodd here today, our cybersecurity administrator, to talk to us a little bit about cybersecurity.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm going to share this presentation. So as Debbie mentioned, it is National Cybersecurity Month that comes around every October. And this year has a new logo and has a new tagline. And it's simply do your part, be cyber smart. And with that tagline, CISA and the Cybersecurity Alliance that put Cybersecurity Awareness Month together, they're really trying to emphasize of how important knowing and understanding the cybersecurity landscape is to protecting yourself, both in terms of being a business, in terms of being a government employee, and in terms of just being a private citizen. Knowing what's out there, knowing what those attacks that you could face are, is instrumental in ensuring that we're continuously protected. So in this presentation, I wanted to talk about kind of the state of cybersecurity that we're facing in the world today, and namely what our chief risks are that we see come across the internet. And it's impacted everyone in almost every facet of life. COVID-19 has been huge in terms of cybersecurity and cybercrime. Based on some data from CrowdStrike, which is a cybersecurity data aggregation company, they have seen more cyber attacks in the first half of 2020 than all of 2019. So work from home, it was beneficial for employees, but it was also very beneficial for attackers. They don't necessarily have offices. They are just as happy sitting on the couch, going at it for 12 hours a day, and leveraging maybe some uncertainties around working from home, leveraging the fact that people will be using email more and aren't necessarily sitting in the office where they can just, walk over and talk to their coworker. All of that has led to a great increase in cyber attacks across the board, and the most prominent increase that we've seen has been in phishing. If you work at Cabarrus County, you've heard phishing a bunch. We honestly hammer it to death, and for good reason. For those who aren't aware, phishing is using malicious links and fake websites to try to steal credentials. Almost all the time, that is what they're after, is a username and password. And we've seen our rate of phishing attacks increase dramatically after they actually lulled off in 2019 a little bit. It slowed down from 2018 to 19, and then hit with a vengeance in 2020 once the whole work from home push started. And looking back at our data from phishing emails that county employees have reported in, we usually average around 400 to 500 emails reported a month. In the month of March, we had 1,400 emails reported in, and we can almost directly attribute that to the COVID-19 pandemic, to everyone going to work from home. The other main attack we've seen take off is ransomware. Ransomware is a potentially devastating attack that holds computer access for ransom. And we've seen some incredibly high profile attacks in the past year. Just a couple months ago, we've seen multinational manufacturing companies be completely shut down by ransomware. We've seen entire health systems, was an internal email that was leaked to the outside, but pretty much the IT department said that there are no more computers for at least until the end of the week. And in that incident, they were without computers completely for about 4 days. Can have a dramatic impact on a hospital. And so with these big, huge, high-risk attacks that we face, there is one commonality that we've seen develop, and that is kind of the driving force in cybercrime right now. And that is that we have these very complex, very technical attacks. Some of the most intricate viruses and malware that have ever been written are being deployed through the absolute simplest methods you can imagine. It is not uncommon to see a virus that took months to develop, that extremely smart people worked on, that can exploit vulnerabilities that people don't even know about yet. But you go through and you analyze it, and you get to the question of, well, how did it get onto our network? How did it get through a firewall? How did it get onto someone's computer? And the answer is, it was emailed to them. It was in an attachment. They put a link on a social media post to it. It's this great duality we're seeing in cybersecurity, where really complex on the technical side, but in terms of actually causing an infection, is that very simple opened an attachment on an email that was malicious. And so, along with our state of cybersecurity risk, we also have our protections that we have. And the most important one has nothing to do with the computer whatsoever. And it's that you, the person in front of the machine, are the best antivirus hardware there is, period. A human sitting in front of the computer can do a better job of recognizing suspicious emails, stuff that looks weird, an attachment you didn't expect. The person sitting in front of the computer will always be better at that than any sort of program. And most attacks, almost all of those that I listed off earlier, rely on a person taking action. They rely on you opening an attachment or clicking a link or entering your credentials into a fake website. And almost all the times those actions are tied to email. It's either links or attachments. And the main force behind that is email is so cheap. It's so easy. It costs almost nothing to send out how many ever emails you want to. And with that, the next component, so you are the best antivirus. However, antivirus software does still have its place. It's your backup. And within the county, we use some of the latest and greatest technology we can get our hands on. We're quite proud of the fact that we're always looking to improve all the tool set that we have. And a question I get asked an awful lot just in my personal life is, well, which antivirus software is the best? Which one's going to provide me the best protection? And it's difficult to answer. That's not a simple question. But what I can say is that all reputable vendors of antivirus software are going to offer some protection from those sneaky technical attacks. So up top, I say most attacks rely on you taking action. There's a subset of them, a minority, but there is a subset that don't require your input, that don't rely on human error. Antivirus software will cover you there. Make sure that those don't happen. Antivirus software also is going to help us lessen the effects of human error. So say you did get an attachment that was a little bit suspicious and contained some code in there that was less than good. Antivirus software would help step in and help keep that contained and not allow that to become, well, let it stay a mistake and not become a compromise. And the last point, and one that's going to be very important a couple slides from now, is being careful on social media. Social media, we've seen it become a very powerful tool, both for those with good and bad intentions. We can now transfer information from one side of the world to the other in less than 30 seconds. It's incredibly powerful. But the biggest thing that's hard to do on social media is verify information, verify if it's true. A lot of stuff out there is designed to play on emotions and designed to get you to share it out, to say, to scream from the mountaintops, this is a problem, we've got to do something. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. And so the biggest thing on social media is checking before you share stuff out, checking to make sure that that information is accurate and that you're not kind of falling for someone else's scam. And I mentioned social media because the other large looming cybersecurity issue is our 2020 presidential election. The U.S. presidential election attracts the attention of the world, including the attackers. And I mean everyone, from highly sophisticated nation states all the way down to just some unknown hacker on the internet looking to make a name for themselves. The U.S. election is the world stage for when it comes to trying to launch a cyber attack. Along that, though, we see the same pattern of really highly technical attacks using very simple means to spread. According to some communications we've had with EISAC, which is the Election Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the main thing they see is the same thing I see on a daily basis here at the county, is malicious emails, emails with bad attachments, emails with phishing links. It's the same pattern. It's not necessarily different in the election. It's just much more important. And the biggest thing that's different about the election, because this is specific to it, is both dis and misinformation. They are the most prevalent threat to election cybersecurity. They are a large threat. They're specific to elections. And disinformation is defined as false or inaccurate information that is spread with malicious intent. So someone is intentionally posting false information out on the internet, trying to spread that and either confuse or upset as many people as possible. Well, once people are confused or upset, they might tell their friends. And at that point, it becomes misinformation, which is the unintentional spread of disinformation. And the best way I can explain how this works is with an example. And so in the US, most high schools go through the tradition of nominating a homecoming court and then electing both a homecoming queen and king. So let's say, go back about a decade, which is hard for me to say, and pretend I'm a high school student. Let's say I want to cause harm to the homecoming court election process. My motivation's not really clear. I just want to make sure that whoever's going to get elected, that they have the hardest time possible. What I could do is, back when I was in school, we selected on paper ballots with a pen. So I could start going around and saying, well, hey, I saw my English teacher dumping a whole bunch of ballots just in the trash can. She was going through sorting which ones she didn't like and throwing them away. Well, if I suddenly get 10 or 50 other people in a school of 2,000 to start saying that they saw that, to start spreading some rumors that, hey, someone's messing with the ballots, that someone wants someone to win, maybe someone got paid off, just start spreading that discord. It's easy to see how all of a sudden the entire student body is no longer confident in the election process. Whether it was real or not, whether anything nefarious actually happened or not, there's now no trust left in that elections process, because half the student body thinks that ballots were thrown in the trash when in reality nothing was. And that's what makes disinformation and misinformation so dangerous, is they attack trust rather than data. Most of cybersecurity, if we're attacking, we're interested in going after data. We want confidential information. We want social security numbers. We want credentials. We want some form of data so that we can have it and use it to our advantage. When you're dealing with disinformation campaigns, I don't want the data. I just want to make people not trust the data, to not trust the process. It's incredibly dangerous, and it's something that the U.S. government, all through all branches of private cybersecurity, something we're all taking very seriously. And to prevent disinformation, it requires diligence from both sides, both from the public and from the government. From the government, from our side, our biggest job is to remain consistent and thorough, providing good information in a consistent way in the same spot, providing all the information we can that's up to date, timely, accurate, really just being that good source of information so that there's not uncertainty, so that there's not questions. On the public's part, it requires diligence in making sure the information they receive is verifiable, that it comes from an official source, that we actually get information from the agency that's responsible for it. And that ties in very nicely to the whole thing about making sure on social media that that information is verifiable and legitimate. If that verification's not there, disinformation can spread pretty rapidly, and will have a negative effect on the U.S. populace. And so to protect against all this, it ties very nicely back into their tagline of doing your part and being cyber smart. If anyone would like to learn more, staysafeonline.org is a fantastic resource for some cybersecurity guidance on both your personal and business lives, on how to stay safe and secure and not become part of a statistic, and be able to work and thrive in the work from home online environment of 2020. And Debbie, with that, I believe I will turn it back over to you to finish us out on our innovation report.
Debbie, you're muted.
Sorry. I think Jack had a, thank you for that cybersecurity report. Be looking online. It will not be misinformation on our social media platforms. We'll be sharing some other tips and tricks about cybersecurity on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you, Jack. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you both for that report, and sincere congratulations to all of our folks for that wonderful award. I was honored to participate in that virtual presentation and watch it online. Being #1 in the nation, I think we were one of only just 2 or 3 out of the entire program that had a featured video that included myself and Debbie and Todd talking about Cabarrus County. And of course Debbie pointed out the second and third place were Los Angeles and San Diego, I believe, 2 extremely large communities. So it really is a huge honor for our folks to be chosen #1, and we're so proud of all of you for what you do all the time, not just in winning the award, but following that award. Then they had a panel discussion, I think, of 3 individuals, and Todd Shanley participated in that. Also answering questions about various programs, and that had a national audience. So our folks really shined throughout that process, and all of the cybersecurity issues that Jack pointed out are certainly relevant things that we can all relate to as we are in this election environment. And so I think that's extremely helpful to our citizens to understand exactly what is happening there and the things that are going on. So did you have anything else before we move on, or did anyone else have any comments or questions for Debbie and Jack?
I've got a quick question for Jack, and that was a very good report and understanding how misinformation works. So thanks for that. But I wanted to clarify for the viewing audience, our actual voting machines in Cabarrus County where votes are tallied do not connect to the internet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So that some hacker somewhere, and you are 100% right that a presidential election attracts a lot of attention. And I guess I just wanted to clarify, a hacker sitting at a desk somewhere else cannot access the machines that we tabulate votes here in Cabarrus County.
And honestly, following that point, that's one of the reasons we see misinformation be so prominent in election scenarios, is because there's so much in place to protect the actual votes. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that an attacker, unless they get incredibly lucky, is not going to be able to change votes. There's too much audit trail, there's too much security around the actual vote. So instead, they try to attack the trust in the electoral process.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that clarification. And I will go on the record in saying that last year, I believe it's probably October, we got the same type of report, and I quadrupled the number of digits in all my passwords after you gave your presentation to us.
So your password's no longer 1, 2, 3, 4?
That is correct.
So mentioning that on television.
No, thank you very much, Jack. Thank you, Debbie, as well for that report.
Yeah, and congratulations on those awards. And while we're on the topic, our next regular meeting will be, I think, on October the 19th. And by that time, early voting will already be underway. Our folks at the Board of Election have worked really hard to establish early voting sites, particularly in light of the COVID situation and in consideration of social distancing. They've come up with some additional sites. I think it's important for all of us to repeat regularly that there will be no early voting at the Board of Elections where people are used to going. Instead, they have secured some larger spaces where people can safely social distance and go through the voting process without being crowded at all. And I think they finalized the fourth of those locations today. They will be the old Northern Tool or Northern Hydraulic building on Concord Parkway. I think formerly may have been a BI-LO, a grocery store as well. There will be one site originally had been planned for Charlotte Motor Speedway. There were some complications there, so that site has now been moved to the Embassy Suites there on Bruton Smith Boulevard. It's also labeled as the Concord Convention Center. Then the Cabarrus Arena, which we talked about extensively earlier in the meeting, will be our third site. And then the fourth one will be the Amtrak Depot in downtown Kannapolis, which has been used as an early voting site in the past. So those four sites, I think all four will open on October 15th. There is information on the county website about those locations, although I did notice the Board of Elections webpage was not operating exactly correctly earlier today, and it may be that they were finalizing that fourth location. But all of that information is available there, as well as the opening and closing times on those sites as well. So we encourage people to get that information, and you can always call the Board of Elections or call the county main number if anyone needs additional information on those. Any other?
Yeah,
Yes.
Chairman Morris, if I may, we're also going to have a dashboard on our website that indicates what the wait times are at those early voting locations. Okay. And as you know, you can go to any of the early voting sites. You don't have to be within your own district. So that way you might, citizens can check to see if there's a long wait time at one, they may prefer to drive to another one to vote.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments before we move to item 3.8? Thank you. We are happy to have with us Bob Bushy to talk about the Connect Beyond project for an update and presentation. Welcome, Bob.
Good afternoon. Thank you, commissioners. We're very excited to have a presentation this evening on high capacity transit as part of the Connect Beyond project. As you know, this was something that was identified as a need in our Cabarrus County Long Range Transportation Plan. And I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Phil Conrad for introductions.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to Chairman Morris and the commissioners for putting this item on the agenda tonight. Just want to take a couple minutes. I'm Phil Conrad. I serve as your staff to the Cabarrus Rowan MPO. It's the two-county MPO area with all the municipalities. I'd like to thank Cabarrus County for almost 20 years, my almost 20 years here of active participation with the MPO. We've had Commissioner Poole as our chair on multiple occasions. We've had other members of your commission that have been active participants, and we've certainly, as a group, benefited from your strong support. I also wanted to compliment Mr. Bushy, Manager Downs, the commission on the Long Range Public Transit Master Plan. It's truly an innovative plan. Over the last several weeks, I've been looking at that plan pretty closely, going through the financial piece and some of the recommendations. And we'll be including those as part of our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And we'll be happy to provide that information. We will be providing that information to our committees and can do that to the commissioners as well. Part of that master plan, as you know, as was mentioned by Mr. Bushy, is the high capacity transit corridors. There are some recommendations that are part of that master plan that we will obviously incorporate as part of our plan update. Recently, we received a presentation from the consultant, and we've got representatives on the Zoom meeting here from HDR, Jorge Luna. We've got two Jasons, Jason Wager with Centralina and Jason Lawrence with CATS, and they're going to provide some information to you on where we are in terms of the high capacity transit analysis. And with that, I'll turn it over to them. But again, thank you for your support over the years. And we look forward to continuing to work with members of your group as well as the full commission as we advance transportation in Cabarrus County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. This is Jason Wager. I'm with the Centralina Regional Council and in the planning department there. And with me, as you heard, is Jorge Luna with HDR, the consultant for the Connect Beyond project. And also Jason Lawrence with CATS is available should any more technical conversations come up or questions come up, so you can help us with that. Also, I believe on the call are folks with Rider Transit here in the area, so if they've got anything to add. So thank you for the chance to share the project and an update this evening. If you can pull up the slides, Ms. Linker, hopefully they're able to be shared. And we move on to the next slide. Would just want to mention right off the bat that this conversation today comes at a pivotal time for our region as we envision a transportation future that supports our post-COVID economic growth and provides regional connections we need for jobs, healthcare, and education, and the local access necessary for communities and individuals to prosper. We think, you know, as tough as these times may be, perhaps this is really excellent timing, as it turns out, to evaluate our mobility options. Go to the next slide, please. So Connect Beyond is a regional mobility initiative being conducted in partnership with the Metropolitan Transit Commission, the Policy Board for Charlotte Area Transit System, or CATS, and covers 12 counties, 2 states, and over 5,000 square miles, where 2.6 million people travel to live, work, and play. Our region is expected to add another 1.4 million more folks by 2045, and during the same time frame, the Charlotte region is expected to receive 2/3 of North Carolina's growth. Further, in the upstate of South Carolina, York and Lancaster counties have the highest growth rates in the region. With this growth and new population, whether young professionals or seniors or anyone else, we know specific transportation needs and expectations will come with that ever diversifying region. Let's go to the next slide. And as our region continues to grow, access to reliable, efficient, and well-connected transportation options are some of the most important factors to ensure everyone can benefit from this growth. You can see some of the changes in population I just mentioned, and we believe through the Connect Our Region or Connect Our Future Regional Growth Framework, which some of you may remember that effort from a few years back, and more recently, the Regional Transit Engagement Series conducted from 2017 to 2019, we have heard loud and clear that this work is critical to a couple of things. One is supporting our regional economic development and quality of life to ensure we remain competitive in the Southeast, nationally, and even globally. We've also heard that success in one county is good for others in the region. And at the same time, our plans must honor those local interests, challenges, and opportunities. So let's go on to the next slide. This is just a snapshot of where our project team has been since we began this effort. This list does not include every touch point, but does provide a sense of how we've engaged our communities and others in the past few months. As you can see, we've shared the candidate corridors in small group sessions. We'll talk more about those tonight. With every transportation planning organization like Cabarrus, Rowan, MPO, and this is across the entire project area. And just heard last week from our project advisory committee, all in advance of seeking broader public input starting this month. And we're happy to have folks from Cabarrus County active on all 3 committees in the regional plan. Those include a technical advisory, community advisory, and policy advisory committee, including folks like Commissioner Shu, Mayor Douche, Mayor Hinnant, and others among local government, community organizations, and business staff. Next slide, please. So what will Connect Beyond do? In short, it's going to define that single coordinated transit vision. What we've heard was the very work we're doing here, specifically the proactive development of this vision for how we move around our region on local interests. Leveraging our collective strengths is vital and extremely timely. And of course, this includes identifying high capacity transit corridors that build upon and complement the Charlotte area system, CATS 2030 system plan, and several other regional and local transportation plans, as Phil mentioned at the top, including, your recently completed and adopted 20-year plan and county level vision that was adopted by the commission. And as you can see, strategizing on where we can coordinate, what are those easy opportunities, and what implementation tools are needed to get this done. Next slide. Our project priorities, in terms of those, in your roles, you likely understand both the challenge of coordinating across such a large geography and the importance of showing to those outside our region a unified approach on key topics and methods for regional collaboration across modes of transit, so technologies of transit, and organizational boundaries. And to be clear, we've heard from the region since kicking off that series I mentioned, the Regional Transit Engagement Series, and again through our committees' inputs on the project mission and goals, that we must have both a long-term vision. In this case, we have a 2040 plan horizon and short-term actions that support these priorities. Next slide. So briefly, some other updates and upcoming activities before I turn things over to Jorge. In addition to project goals, we are currently analyzing existing transit systems and gathering all sorts of related regional data. And alongside that, stakeholder engagement is ongoing. And as I mentioned, a public engagement survey is expected to launch this month. And specific to our discussion today, you can see it starred here in the graphic. We expect to have a strong draft of high capacity transit corridors by the end of this year. During 2021, we will develop strategies for regional mobility centers, cross-system coordination, various transit systems in our region, and set things up like frameworks for transportation demand management, ways to get folks out of the single occupancy vehicle, for example, if that's a viable option and opportunity. And of course, we're learning a lot about that during the pandemic, about how we can do what we need to do in different ways. And then of course, local land use policy will also come into play, among many other topics. And I guess not to mention, we anticipate all this work will set ourselves up for those critical and ultimately what we need to be well informed about, conversations around governance and funding. So with this, I'd now like to turn things over to Jorge Luna, Project Manager for Connect Beyond and lead consultant with the project at HDR. Jorge?
Great, thanks Jason. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and present and share with you this information. So the purpose of this conversation here is to share with you the candidate corridors that we have for Connect Beyond. And overall, I'll cover on the candidate corridors, and then I'll pivot into the mobility network that we'll be talking about real quick and how all this plays together. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, what do we mean about a total mobility network? As Jason noted, our region is growing and growing fast. As the region grows, additional mobility options will be needed to get about our daily activities, to get to work, school, go shopping, visit a friend, go to an appointment, etc. And mobility options vary across our region. Maybe at the center of our region, there in in downtown Charlotte, at the center, you have several mobility options, from an e-scooter, you have light rail, you have just different options themselves, express bus, shuttles, you have transportation network companies like Uber, Lyft. And then, but as you radiate and keep going further and further away, mobility options they diminish. And what we're trying to do is, what Connect Beyond is aiming to achieve, is a bold vision of the right mobility options that can empower our region to continue to grow. And what do we mean about this? Imagine yourself at the center of that picture. You are that individual there, or a family member or a friend that needs to get about the region to be able to meet all their trip needs, be able to complete their daily activities. So may require maybe a wheelchair. And do we have paths and accessible roadway networks with infrastructure to accommodate a wheelchair or a bike, or be able to walk to reach a transit center, to reach a bus stop, to do a longer commute or a longer travel time? And are you looking for very fast, very flexible service? And maybe it's a shuttle type of service, maybe something smaller. Are you looking to traverse and go maybe from one county to another very quickly? That would mean a different mode. It would potentially be bus rapid transit or light rail, or streetcar or commuter rail. So there's mobility, again, means something a little different to everyone. And what we're trying to do here is find that right mix for the region and in the places of trips and those areas that may warrant a certain type of mode or a certain type of mobility. Next slide, please. So how are we planning to do this? And we boiled down a 4-step process, 18-month 4-step process in these bullet points that you see here. We're evaluating the existing system. We're looking at what are we doing well, where are some gaps, what is the data telling us in the future, where will growth be happening, where will employment and population get added to the region. And then that's step 1. Step 2, we're identifying high capacity transit corridors. We start off with the network that will travel and traverse and then be able to connect the greatest amount of people in very quickly and speedily. Then the next one over, we'll be looking at envisioning a total mobility network. So we've identified these key corridors that could be bus rapid transit, light rail, could be the commuter rail. But then how do we connect those? You cannot reach, say, a freeway, for example, or highway without having an arterial road or having another form of transportation network to be able to reach these higher capacity facilities. So that's what we're doing on this side. We're looking at high capacity transit itself, and then we're looking at bus networks and other options to connect to that high capacity transit mode. And beyond that, not only connect to high capacity, but connect to other services that connect the region, that connect communities to shop, go to school, live, play, work, whatever the case may be. Once we were done with step 3 of envisioning this total network, we then go into step 4 and develop strategies, implementation strategies. What do we mean by that? We mean, if we are thinking about a high capacity transit corridor, what are some important elements that we need to start thinking now for a corridor in the future to be successful? Do we have the right maybe land uses surrounding a particular high capacity transit corridor? Do we have the right land uses? Do we have sufficient right-of-way? Can we start thinking about right-of-way preservation and maybe even transit-oriented development? What are some of the key strategies for these nodes within those high capacity transit corridors? So those will be the recommendations at the end and strategies to keep this project and what the vision is for the region moving forward. Next slide, please. So this is just a graphic, sort of a representation of the layers of mobility that we're trying to define for the region. We have the very first layer, which is high capacity transit, light rail, bus rapid transit, streetcar, commuter rail. And then the next tier down, working and supporting those high capacity services, We have commuter express, maybe road, regional, local, intercity bus, limited stop bus, rural flex routes. There's a lot of flavors for transit out there. So we would be looking at the right component that could feed the network and at the same time feed the greater and connect the greater region. We'd also be looking at paratransit service. I'm pretty sure you all are familiar with Americans with Disabilities Act and paratransit service that's needed to support underlying fixed route service. By law, we need to make sure that we provide equal access and opportunity access for those with disabilities. So we would be looking also at the same time at that network coverage. And beyond that, maybe there are areas in the region that may not necessarily be candidates for fixed route service, but can we look at zone-based service, more an on-demand type of mobility option for those areas and regions that are a bit further away, less populated, but are still in need of additional mobility services. We then also look at TDM strategies, transportation demand management strategies, such as van pool, carpool, bike to work, walk to work. So different strategies to help the individual have another option of mobility if they so choose to get about their daily life and going to work, to and from work. And lastly, again, it's that final layer where all these recommendations and strategies would be coming together, and in a report that would be coordinating and working with the MPOs in the region. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and present, because it is very important that we work together in identifying this vision, because recommendations will eventually go back to each region to keep moving this effort forward. Next slide, please. So right now, I showed you various layers of mobility. We have high capacity transit, fixed route bus, we have transportation demand management strategies. But our effort right now has been to tee off with the high capacity transit network, the corridors right now. So what is high capacity transit? It refers to a transit mode that has greater capacity than a traditional bus. We're looking at bus rapid transit, light rail, express bus, arterial or highway-based, and even commuter rail. So that's what our mindset has been right now, and working with the various stakeholders on this effort, identifying these high-capacity modes. Think CATS, in the region with some of the services that they offer, and including light rail as high-capacity transit. Next slide, please. So how are we accomplishing this? So this is our funnel concept here of where we've been gathering a lot of data, gigabytes of data, and making sense of all the information, previous studies, ongoing studies, population growth, employment growth, current and projected in the region. We've been looking at land use changes, the effort of the 2 years worth of engagement of the Regional Transit Engagement Series. Also, we've been looking at your plan, the one that unanimously was passed by the County Commission, the 20-year plan, and in that vision, we've been looking at that and taking that information into consideration. And we're step 2, identifying right now the candidate corridors. We'll be gathering committee and public input, and then we'll refine those corridors based on the public input, where we're asking, are we looking, is the region, are we too far out on a corridor? Are we missing a particular area? So we're refining those. Then we'll come back and we'll do a readiness scoring. What do we mean about that? That readiness scoring is all the corridors that have been identified, who are in the planning process of coming to reality. So we've been working, and we'll be working through that once we refine the corridors. That refinement, when we do we refine the corridors, and at the same time we're doing the readiness sorting. Then we'll have our preferred corridors, and we'll then build off of the other mobility layers off of the high capacity transit corridors. Next slide, please. One interesting piece of information, we took the regional travel demand model. This is a lot of information, and it shows you how many trips are happening in the region right now. Then also we looked at 2045, and this right here is that model into the future. Where will trips be happening? The trips are happening everywhere across the entire study area, but we were trying to refine and bubble up to the surface those areas that have the greatest congestion, if you will, that have the greatest number of trips happening between the different regions. And it was just very interesting, for example, Concord Kannapolis attracting neighboring travel markets, meaning your neighbors are coming to shop and do other activities there in the Concord Kannapolis area for shopping, meeting, to school, or other activities. So it's been very interesting. And this map, what it tells you, the lines themselves are telling you how one market area connects to another. The thicker and redder the line is, means the greater the number of trips that are happening between those two market areas. Then we have these black circles with arrows. Those are meant to represent trips that are happening within a market area. And just when you think of market area as a neighborhood, trips that are happening within that market area / neighborhood, and just staying internal, that the folks work, live, play within that market area, and really don't need to go to a market area or a neighborhood to complete their daily activities. So that's sort of the representation of the lines on the circles that you see on the screen. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we took into consideration was transit propensity. We built a transit propensity index looking at youth, concentration of youth, elderly, minority, low-income, disabled individuals in zero-car households. And next slide, please. This is the youth population density. The next slide shows elderly population density. Next slide, please. Then we see minority population density concentration. The redder the area, the greater the number of people concentrated in those particular areas. Next slide, please. We also looked at low income. Next slide. We looked at disabled concentration density. Next slide, please. And we also looked at zero-car households. And all this information with the next slide, please, was aggregated, was crunched together, if you will, into our transit propensity index, where areas that show up on the screen are good candidates, if you will, to provide and serve with some transit service out there. This is information from the American Community Survey, is part of the census data, and this is helping us in the short term, and then we're also looking at data and information like the trip flows that I showed you. They are in 2045 for the future. So we have information that is existing or current right now, as well as projected population to help inform the decision-making process. Next slide, please. So what are the candidate corridors based on all the data and information and conversations that we've been having and the region has been having before this effort got started? What are the candidate corridors? Next slide, please. The candidate corridors, these are what we've been talking with the community, talking with stakeholders, talking with MPOs, talking with, LJ and Andy as well. We've been having some feedback as well as with Phil. We have an interactive map, and folks have been able to populate the map and give us feedback on the corridors that we've identified. What you see on the screen right now is there's thin red lines, and we have the story map that you'll be able to access and see these in greater detail. But we've outlined, and I think Jason has just shared it on the chat, the link to be able to visit the website. But we're building off right now off of the Links Gold Line, or the 2030 system plan. We have the Links Gold Line, the Blue Line extension, the Blue Line itself. We have Links Red Line, commuter rail, also Links Silver Line. There's the Links North Corridor, and then overall, then we created a buffer and showed that 2030 system plan. We also have identified on the plan, and it's very faint that you'll see, but the extension of high capacity transit as outlined in the recently adopted 20-year plan that you all worked on in past. We have that identified. So the blue lines are commuter rail opportunities, and sort of the greener blue lines are those in high capacity transit corridors. So there are options out there that we have and that we see right there in terms of the opportunities in candidate corridors. Next slide, please. And just to highlight real quick, so we've identified, this is in the Cabarrus area, commuter rail sort of extending towards Kannapolis and continuing further on and ending in Salisbury in the Rowan area. and some high capacity transit routes, of course, connecting the airport, connecting the shopping area, connecting Concord, and traveling east-west on NC 73 that we've identified. Next slide, please. This at the end is what we've heard so far, a lot of comments, a lot of feedback that has been received to date. And this is just our tool of engagement in the COVID-19 era, and how we are grabbing input from many, many different people, but through the website, allowing feedback on the map itself. Next slide, please. And for next steps, maybe I'll turn it over to Jason. Jason, if you just want to cover next steps, please.
Sure, Jorge. Yeah, if you want to just move to the next slide, please, and I'll just put in the chat the website for the project. So simply just signing up for project updates can be done on the website. There are several project resources and that you can access there as well. And you can see some of the other activities coming up. We will be reaching back out with that community survey through staff and our advisory committees. So that'll be able to be shared out very soon. And just generally, nothing's off the table right now. This is the time to share ideas, concerns. We want to hear it all. And then, of course, it's not as maybe as exciting as the transit corridors, but coming up is the integrated bus strategies. And turns out that can really start having some impacts in terms of more near-term wins and some ideas and activities that could really help save some dollars and some efforts amongst all our regional transit providers. So you see the contact us email at the bottom. Feel free to reach out. That will take it to our project team. And thanks again for having us this evening to share this update. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, commissioners, do you have questions for any of these presenters tonight? That's a lot of information.
That was a lot of information. Jason, quick question. On one of your early slides, you had a double bridge that had an arch under it. Can you tell me where that bridge is located? It was an old photo with old cars. Maybe your second slide, maybe third slide.
Yeah, it's the 74 bridge back around 1934, I believe it was, and actually stole that from Jason Lawrence, who's on the call here. But we just found that to be really interesting because of all the work now going on with the next iteration of that update. So, there's clearly been a lot of conversations like this over the years, and kind of here we are again, right? And just thought that was an interesting slide.
And Jason, if you don't mind, I'll just add to that. This is Jason Lawrence with CATS. We used that photo extensively during our update to the system update when we were talking about potentially looking across the Catawba River for the Silver Line light rail. And the reason we showed that was that bridge is still out there today, and the taller bridge there, and the state is eventually replacing that. So coordinating with the state when we're replacing key infrastructure is really critical for all modes of transportation. So we certainly see the value of coordinating with all our partners when those opportunities arise.
Well, I guess the reason it caught my eye is there's two things that take a lot of planning, and it seems like you're always chasing your tail. And one of them is building schools, and one of them is building roads. And maybe not necessarily just roads, but transportation as a whole. And you guys are doing a good job of at least doing what you can do to get out ahead of it and try to. And so I appreciate all this good information.
Definitely agree with that. It's very important to our entire region, and certainly Cabarrus County is a big piece of that. And we appreciate your efforts, and Commissioner Hsu and several of our mayors that have participated in that. We certainly appreciate the time that you have devoted to the process as well. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? As we said initially, that's a lot of information, a lot for us to absorb and think about, and I'm sure that we'll be having many discussions in the future. So thank you all very much for being with us tonight. Okay, at this time, we will move to discussion items that will require action at our regular meeting. First of those is item 4.1, appointments to boards and committees. And you all have a complete report on your agenda as to what those appointments are. I think a big chunk of those are our youth council, which is something that rotates very frequently as students graduate and move on and we get new folks involved. So we're always happy to see those. For the benefit of our audience out there, the appointments to boards and committees, we always have openings on various committees. Those are typically listed on our website. We encourage folks to go take a look at those. A little bit about the method of appointment is typically our board follows recommendations from those individual boards and committees as to folks that have been involved in those areas and are willing to serve on those committees. So we rely very heavily on those recommendations from those various boards themselves as to people that are engaged in the work that they're doing. So we encourage folks to explore that. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of tonight's appointments? Okay, thank you. And we move now to item 4.2. We're happy to have Robbie Furr with us to talk about a memorial tree at the Cooperative Extension Service.
Good evening. Yes, thank you. Wanted to come before the board this evening just to make you aware of a project that our Extension Master Gardeners would like to take on here at our facility off of Cabarrus Avenue. And that is installing a memorial tree on the property here to memorialize, I suppose, the Extension Master Gardeners who have been a part of our program and who are no longer with us. As you may or may not know, the Extension Master Gardener program started here in Cabarrus County 35 years ago. We've had just around 250 folks that have gone through that certified training over those past 35 years. And I think what has brought that on, especially the desire to put out a memorial tree in particular this year, is we've had 4 Extension Master Gardeners pass just in the last several months. And so that has brought that out, and our group has met and wants to make this happen. So we had conversations with Kyle about our location and where would that work here regarding water lines, sewer lines, encroachment, all those kinds of things. And so we've got a location. I am going to share something with you. So this is, if you're able to see this, our screen here, this is the aerial view of our property here. And this yellow dot here is the proposed location, a general proposed location for this tree. And it will be a dogwood tree. Cherokee Chief Dogwood Tree, which blooms red in April. So this is Cabarrus Avenue is there to the top of your screen. So this is if you're facing our property to the right of our property, and we're looking at this tree being placed somewhere in that corner where the 2 sidewalks meet, accessible from the sidewalk so that folks can come and view the tree. There'll be a placard there as well to memorialize those Extension Master Gardeners. So we wanted to bring this before you, ask if you had questions. Here is an example of what the tree would look like. This is the Cherokee Chief Dogwood Tree and what the blooms would look like in April. I'm happy to answer some questions, see what you may have as questions or concerns before we move forward with this project.
Robbie, this is Lynn. In this memorial, will it have the capacity to add future names to the memorial plaque, for future Master Gardeners that pass?
Yes, our proposal is that the placard that will be at the tree will be a general placard with perhaps a quote or a saying, and then stating that this tree is placed here in memory of cooperative extension master gardeners who have passed. And then we will have inside our facility in the atrium area, which is an area where we have lots of plants that our extension master gardeners care for. We would like to then, we could post inside our facility a listing of those extension master gardeners. That way it's an opportunity to update that on a regular basis and wouldn't require the expense of replacing a placard every year.
Sounds good. Thank you, Robbie.
Okay, any other questions for Robbie on this project? Okay, it sounds like it will be a beautiful addition to that facility, and we thank you for bringing that to us. We move now to item 4.3, and this is one that we have been requested to act on tonight, which would require that that we suspend our rules and have a vote. This is a National 4-H Week proclamation, and we are happy to have Tracy LeCompte with us to talk about that. I hope we have Tracy LeCompte with us.
If she is not online, I'm happy to speak for her.
We are happy to have you speak for her, Mr. Furr.
Yes, National 4-H Week, as you know, we come before the commissioners each year. It happens the first full week of October every year. So this year it is October the 4th through the 10th. We are actually day 2 into National 4-H Week. So all across the United States, 4-H programs will be celebrating National 4-H Week, offering lots of unique opportunities to showcase the youth in those counties and the states and alumni who are part of those programs. And so we are thankful for the support of our county management and our Board of Commissioners each year and the ability to recognize this unique week each year for us. So thank you for making this proclamation.
Excellent. And since we are being asked to suspend our rules to pass this proclamation, I will read that at this 4-H proclamation. Whereas 4-H youth across the nation are leading efforts to solve problems in their communities and make a difference for their futures. And whereas 4-H is the largest youth development organization in North Carolina and the largest in the nation with over 6 million participants. And whereas 4-H in North Carolina claims 261,210 youth members and 16,789 volunteers, while the Cabarrus County 4-H program numbers are more than 11,000 members and more than 765 volunteers. And whereas 4-H, as part of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension System of North Carolina State University and North Carolina A&T State University, is a program where youth learn through opportunities that provide them hands-on experiences in 4-H's mission, mandates of science, engineering, and technology, healthy living, and citizenship. And whereas 4-H has connected youth and their communities with the innovative research and resources from our nation's 106 land-grant universities and colleges for more than 101 years. Now, therefore, the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as National 4-H Week in Cabarrus County. We urge the people of this county to take advantage of the opportunity to become more aware of this special program that enhances our young people's interest in their futures as part of Cabarrus 4-H youth development and to join us in recognizing the unique partnership between our county and our state university system. Do I hear a motion that we suspend our rules to take action on this proclamation tonight?
I move that we suspend rules, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Shue, a second by Commissioner Kiger to suspend the rules. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes, and I would now entertain a motion to approve the proclamation declaring National 4-H Week in Cabarrus County.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Honeycutt, a second by Commissioner Shue. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Furr, for bringing that to us tonight, and we are proud to proclaim this week as National 4-H Week in Cabarrus County. Those are some pretty impressive statistics in that proclamation. Thank you for bringing them to our attention. Okay, and now we move to item 4.4. As you all know, we've had previous discussion about our acquisition of property at the Stonewall Jackson facility being transferred to the county, as well at Franklin's Park, as well as some historic preservation properties. And so we're happy to have Jonathan Marshall to talk to us about a boundary survey.
So this boundary survey is a very specific request that we're bringing before you. We did go out with a request for proposals for a number of survey companies have selected Concord Engineering and Surveying, in part because of their work with the state on other similar surveys, as well as work with us on some surveys where they've done the boundary and then created new property lines after that. And it is very much an iterative process, which we think this will be. Again, this is an outgrowth of the Session Law 2020-63. It deals with the disposition of the Stonewall Jackson Training School property. Of course, the training school and youth detention facility will continue to operate. So this boundary survey is the beginning where we will finish what we'd already started when we did the survey of the Franklin's Park and the soccer complex. But we'll finish the boundary of the remainder of the property. And then based on that, we'll continue discussions that we've already begun with public safety, North Carolina Public Television, the State Historic Preservation Office, and the State Property Office, and as well as the folks there at the Stonewall Jackson facility. But we will do this boundary survey completed, and then we'll start going in and looking at what the future division of those properties will be, and we'll be coming back to you with another proposal for additional surveying to lay out those new lines. In addition, we will probably request some proposals to map where some of the buildings are in the historic district. We will be, we believe, realigning. There is a historic district there. We believe we're going to need to realign that historic district to include some additional properties and to exclude some that will stay within the secured perimeter. But in addition to that, there's some property that is slated for a public safety training facility, and we'll probably come back to you with some proposals to do topography on those, so, which will help us with future planning of that property along with other folks in our area. So again, this is a very specific proposal for the boundary survey. The session law itself did state that the state would have the property surveyed. It did not provide any funding for that. The intention is that there are 2 parcels on Old Charlotte Road that are to be sold, and the proceeds of that sale will pay for the relocation of the secure fence. And the state property office has indicated they would also use those proceeds to reimburse us for this survey. But Our other option is, as we move forward and we find a buyer to restore that property and rehabilitate that property, that it may be part of the sale of that we could get reimbursement for this. But just because of expediency, we thought we should take this before you and ask you to use your contingency funds potentially to get this survey started.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any questions for Mr. Marshall? I strongly encourage that we support this to move forward with this project. As Jonathan explained, it just is more expedient and gets us where we need to be more quickly. I will say that we've already had some folks express interest in preservation of some of those buildings out there. So the quicker we can get these things in place, the better it will be for all of those projects. Any questions before we move on? All right, thank you. We move now to item 4.5. This is an economic development incentive agreement with the City of Concord, and I think Jonathan will address that one as well.
This is an item that will require a public hearing at your regular meeting, because you will be considering entering an economic development incentive agreement with the City of Concord. It is actually for a private development or redevelopment in downtown Concord, very similar to the projects that are taking place in the City of Kannapolis. And of course, with Kannapolis, your agreement is with the city itself. So Mr. Cook has drafted an agreement that will be added to your agenda. It is being reviewed by all parties at this point, that is in the same vein as that agreement with Kannapolis. So should you consider this favorably, we would enter into a 10-year agreement with the City of Concord. The incentive would be based on the private investment downtown. It would not be any greater than a percentage of our actual tax base increase. So if they do not realize the tax base increase that they projected, then we would actually, that incentive would reduce. It does have a cap, however, based on the proposed $50 million investment that we made. And of course, this is related to development, the parcels between Market and Spring Street, redevelopment of the old City Hall site, and then also adding in the area next to the county parking deck, adding that wrap that would be residential units above, but retail and office on the lowest level. The amount of commercial square footage since we've last talked to you about it has stayed the same, although they have looked at moving what was potentially a restaurant on the wrap building to the redevelopment of City Hall site instead. So there is the full slideshow that's included in your agenda, and I'd be happy to go through any of those. Again, these are illustrations of that development. The city has worked very closely with them on both the design and how this would take place. There's been back and forth on the demolition of City Hall, and that will actually be done by the private agency now. One other thing I did want to add before I take any questions is, in order to do a master development agreement like this that the city has entered with Lansing Melbourne Group, any properties they acquire, they would need to pay the appraised value for. So we would be paid $165,000 for this wrap property next to our parking deck, which was the appraised value that we had determined last year. And again, you'll be asked to hold a public hearing for this purpose. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, Lauren, can you go back one slide? Just to show you what's going to go on the property that we're selling to the, yeah, that's, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this property is, as you can see on the Barbrick Street side, there would actually be commercial or office on the lowest level. Initially, at one point, we talked at 4 levels of residential. This shows 5, and it's also showing now the potential for penthouse apartments on the top level. This was, with the top level shown to be a restaurant, but they found there was greater interest expressed in the redevelopment of the City Hall site for that purpose. Although we are still negotiating and talking to them about this being non-residential on the top level, So that is something that's still in consideration.
Okay, and that's the county parking deck in the rear of that building.
It is, and one of the things, and of course, when we built the parking deck, it was planned, it really worked out on that parcel to leave this area open, and we actually had our architects determine what the proper depth would be for a wrap like this. So it was planned with this in mind. Actually, we did not believe it would be quite so tall, and you'd still be able to see the deck. But from this viewpoint, or by doing this, when you're on Market Street and the rest of downtown, instead of just seeing the side of a deck, you would actually see this new development, which would integrate with the development between Market and Spring. And then that City Hall redevelopment will actually have frontage on both Market and Union Street, tying the two together. So this is a major transformation, along with our courthouse, the Cabarrus Bank renovation, what's already happened at the Hotel Concord and old Heilig Myers building. These are all major transformations for downtown Concord. The intent of our supporting this with the city is that even though there is a lot of infrastructure in place in this area, there are a number of improvements in infrastructure that still need to be made to support this type of development downtown. From our benefit, even though these are residential units, and I think you will see school children there, this is an area within our school district which we actually do have capacity without having to build new schools. So there are benefits to us in that respect also, even though there's a residential component to this.
Okay, any questions or comments for Jonathan? Thank you for bringing that to us. We have talked about this extensively in the past. I think this is going to be a project that will very positively impact downtown Concord. And of course, the county has a major investment, with that being the county seat with our governmental center and courthouse complex, but also this provides us an opportunity to participate, as you mentioned, in downtown Concord, just as we have in downtown Kannapolis, as well as the Farmington project in Harrisburg. And we look forward to having other opportunities where we can help be a catalyst to some of the positive redevelopment that's occurring in Cabarrus County. So thank you for bringing that to us. This will be included on our regular agenda for a public hearing at our regular meeting later this month. I think that is included, right?
That's right. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll move now to item 4.6 from the Department of Human Services, fiscal year 21 Home and Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan Revision, and we're glad to have Anthony Hodges with us to talk about that.
Good evening, Commissioners, and glad to be with you again. If you recall, back in June, I came before you and for approval of the fiscal year 21 Home and Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan. And that plan at the time was based on our fiscal year 20 numbers. Most years, the state doesn't come out with their final numbers till after the start of the fiscal year, and that was again the case this year. The plan that was approved in June was for $883,247 through the block grant plus a 10% match, which made the total at $981,386. We did get the final numbers a few weeks ago, and it was a slight decrease from those numbers. The number was decreased 1.12%. So we lost we lost $9,910 through the grant. And with the county match, it's a little bit over $11,000, $11,013. So I just asked that y'all would approve the current amount of $873,337 plus the 10% match for a total of $970,373. And each of those, in the committee back in when we decided, the advisory committee back in February and March when we decided how to divide the money, or how the committee decided, approved at that time, that if the change was less than 5%, I would just spread that reduction over all of the services. So all the programs lost basically 1.12% of their funding. Any questions for?
Any questions for Anthony? I think in our agenda, we have a significant amount of detail about each of these programs and their funding amount. It's pretty extensive area that's touched by this funding.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, we thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We move now to item 4.7, Office for Purchase of Surplus Property. And we're happy to have Kyle Billifer back with us to speak to that.
Good evening. Again, PIN number 564-100-1979000 is a property that is listed as a county asset and has been on our books since 1965. It is a vacant 0.21 acre tract in a residential subdivision, originally intended to be a right-of-way. We've recently received an offer to purchase from Mark McCormick for $1,800. The deposit check has been received and transferred to the finance department. In order to accept this offer to purchase, it is required to go through the standard upset bid process. The process for upset bids is attached on this agenda item, General Statute 160A-260. Mr. McCormick did approach, I believe it started with Susie Morris, our Planning and Zoning Department. Then that request went to Jonathan Marshall and then myself. This was not a property that we were actively advertising on GovDeals, as it is just 0.21 acres and really just good for a right-of-way. It's my understanding that Mr. McCormick has purchased 10 acres, and this is a portion of that he would use for the actual road to enter that 10 acres. So there's a plan to develop.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Billifer? And you see the map on your screen now showing that parcel. Okay, hearing no questions. Did you have anything else on that one, Kyle?
No, sir. It'll go to the regular meeting. If you all approve it, then I'll start the upset bid process on Tuesday.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move now to item 4.8 from Planning and Development, dissolution of the Watershed Improvement Commission. We're happy to have Kelly Sifford with us to speak to that.
Thank you. Good evening. So, background, the Watershed Improvement Commission was established by the county.
Hold on, Kelly. If you're not talking, I think we got to speak. You need to cut your microphones off.
Are we good now? Okay. So the county commission established the Watershed Improvement Commission in 1967, and its first duties were to establish areas of watershed impoundment for the water supply. Then in the 80s and 90s, it was responsible for finding stream debris removal sites and having these blockages removed with county funding. In 1999, the county commission then chose to use that board as the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. They heard appeals from that board. In 2010, the county turned that responsibility back over to the state of North Carolina. Since then, that board has been hearing drainage issues and problems. However, most of those problems are either private matters or either need to be handled by the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. So we had thought maybe that the erosion control program might come back there for a while, but it doesn't look like that's happening. So we're requesting dissolution of this board as their main jobs have gone away over the years. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Kelly? I will say that I have sat on that board for the last several years. And what she says is absolutely accurate. There have been several occasions where we have had folks to appear before us to talk about issues, and we did not have the capability to help them in that regard. So any other questions? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move now to item 4.9, Soil and Water Conservation District Board applications for farmland preservation grants, and we are happy to have Daniel McClellan with us to talk about that.
Good evening. Good evening. The district board has, over the years since 2008, has applied for these grants through the United States Department of Agriculture and also the North Carolina Department of Agriculture to preserve farmlands in Cabarrus County. So far, we have received 5 different pieces of property that we have purchased but purchased the development rights on, and have preserved like 360 acres of farmland. And the reason this is important is these farmers have to have a base. You know, they don't need these great big tractors or anything like that if they don't have a base land area so that they can farm on. It's also, the cost of services for that area. Once you put that on there, there's no longer going to be houses on the property or anything else. So that's why our district board has, really liked going after these projects. The board at their September board meeting, wanted us to apply for these grants. So that's the reason I'm here, asking for, support from the county commissioners to apply for these grants. And they would like to also thank you for the continued support that we've got for all these years.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. McClellan? I've talked about this many times over the years, and I think there has been a very informative series of articles in the Independent Tribune over the last few weeks talking about this program and some of the benefits that have been attached to it. So it's a very good thing.
Yeah, one question, Mr. Chairman. It's Daniel. Have you got any farms identified for these future grants?
Yes, we've got one right now, and I'm, it's a hard decision for some people, but yes, I know one for sure that we'll be applying for in December.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Daniel. We move now to item 4.10. This is another one that we'll be asking you to suspend the rules and to act on tonight. North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program Bike Safe Grant, and we are happy to have Chief Deputy James Bailey with us. Looks like he's coming directly from his squad car to talk to us about this.
I am. I'm currently at the Rowan Cabarrus at the Concord Business and Technology Center, providing a little security for them. But this is actually an item that is an oversight on my part from the last work session that we had. The commissioners, this board approved the actual grant itself, but I did not get the resolution attached to the agenda item. So there is a resolution that goes with this grant, and it just requires the commissioners to approve the resolution accepting the grant. And I think it requires the chairman and the county manager's signature on that. So I'm here today just to correct that oversight on my part.
Great. Thank you, sir. And we have talked about this extensively in the past, and
yes,
the benefits that have occurred from that. Any questions from any of the commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion that we suspend the rules to take action on this tonight.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Honeycutt. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second by Commissioner Shue. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. That motion passes. And so we would now entertain a motion, and I want to make sure we get the wording correct on this to meet those requirements. I think the motion, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bailey, but a motion to approve the grant award and budget amendment. Well, see, we have a resolution actually that we want to approve, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The actual grant itself was approved by the board. The resolution was not.
Okay, very good. And we have that resolution attached, which is a very lengthy document. So I think a motion to approve the resolution would be all that would be required.
Yeah, and just to remind the board, this particular grant does not require a county match.
Right.
It is $15,000 for the motorcyclist safety program that we run.
Great, thank you, sir. So do I hear a motion that we approve the resolution for the bike safety award?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Shue, second by Commissioner Kiger. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. That motion passes. Thank you, Chief Deputy Bailey, for being back with us tonight.
Thank you, board. I appreciate it.
Okay, and so we move now to the approval of our regular meeting agenda. I do not think we have taken any action during this work session that would change our regular meeting agenda. We did set a public hearing, which is also included in that. Do I hear a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kiger, a second by Commissioner Shue. Is there any Commissioner Shue, Commissioner Honeycutt, I'm sorry. I'm looking all around my computer screen here. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. That motion passes and our regular meeting agenda is approved. Did want to mention one event coming up tomorrow night, Tuesday, October 6th, and that is a national night out. That will be a drive-through event sponsored by the Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office. That will be at the Cabarrus Arena, and it will be from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. They will have a medication drop-off point there for anybody that has medications they need to dispose of. There will Mount Pleasant High School Awesome Club will be conducting a community food drive there. And that will be collection of canned foods. There will be free school supplies while supplies last for folks that need those. And then there will be Safe Kids Cabarrus will have a car seat check station for folks to have their car seats checked for proper installation. So a lot of things going on out there, and that will be tomorrow night from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. at the Cabarrus Arena. So we encourage all of you folks to go out and participate in that. We do have need of a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation and economic development authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 A3 and 4.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Honeycutt, a second by Commissioner Shue. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. That motion passes. We want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We will close out this Microsoft Teams session, and then you all have a link to go into closed session. So we are now in closed session. Thank you.